I think this question is kind of tough. It is a whole passage question, right? Developmental pattern of the whole passage, so we would want to save this for last. But even still, I think it can be kind of tricky after we've read everything else to really narrow in on these choices. So what we want to do, remember, is use process of elimination and try to break these choices down into smaller choices, right? Looking at the specific words in each of these and really analyzing those words. So let's take a look at A. That, I think, is the easiest one to eliminate. And the reason is that I can quickly turn this end part into a question. Careful analysis of a traditional practice. What's the traditional practice? Asking someone for marriage? That's kind of what this passage is about, but it's not analyzing that. It's like a story about one person. So this doesn't, I don't have an answer to that question, right? What is the traditional practice? The fact that I can't easily answer that question tells me this is probably wrong. B, a detailed depiction of a meaningful encounter. Well, I can change that into a question as well. What is the meaningful encounter? Well, a guy is showing up asking for this girl Naomi's hand in marriage. That's meaningful. I mean, I think everyone would agree on that. And is it a detailed depiction? Well, it's certainly retelling the story. Seems like it's a flexible enough phrase that it could work. So I don't know if that's right, but I don't have as strong of a reaction to it as I did to A, where I'm like, yeah, this is definitely wrong. They don't talk about this. C, a definitive response to a series of questions. Well, where's the series of questions? So this is where I think we can get a little distracted by some stuff here. Like, here's a question mark. Here's a question mark. I feel like there's more. Maybe not. Maybe I misjudged this. Yeah, I don't. Here's a question. Here's a question. Here's a question. Yeah, here's a question. I don't know. Is that a series of questions? Maybe I missed one or two here and there. I don't know. It's certainly some questions, but a series of questions? Well, I don't know. Is there a definitive response? I guess. I mean, she says, I mean to have him at the end. That's the last line of the passage. So that seems like a yes to the marriage proposal. But that phrase, series of questions, it's a little tricky. Let's look at D. A cheerful recounting of an amusing anecdote. Well, I do agree with one thing here, just kind of dumbing it down. Is it cheerful? I would say so. I would say this is a generally positive passage. But is it an anecdote? That's a hard word. Maybe we don't know what that is. It basically means a story. But like a personal story. Like, think of any late night talk show. Anytime, like, you know, Conan is interviewing a celebrity, Colbert, Jimmy Kimmel, Jimmy Fallon, any of those guys on late night, anytime they're interviewing a celebrity, they're just kind of asking them stories like, you know, about their kids or about something that happened to them at the store. Like, they're just telling stupid stories. Those are anecdotes. They're just about personal experiences. Now, this is not being told in that way. I know that it's a story because it's a book that we are reading a piece of. But the characters in the story, in the book, are not telling a story. They are living the story. They are living the events that we are reading. So it is not a person kind of recounting something that's already happened in the past. The way that we're reading it, it is a present event. It is something that is happening right now, and we are watching it happen like spectators. So that's tricky. That's a very tough distinction. That's why I think this is a hard question. But those are the kinds of things that we need to start picking apart. And I think we really start doing that only when we acknowledge what process of elimination is really about. It's not about just looking at a choice and saying overall, is it right or wrong? It's about chopping the choices up into smaller choices and analyzing those words. Because part of it could be correct. But if the rest of it is wrong, the correct part doesn't count. And so I think this is where choice B comes in, there's really just two parts here. Is it a meaningful encounter? Yes, definitely, no doubt about it. Is it a detailed depiction? Well, that's such a weak, vague, empty phrase that really anything could be a detailed depiction. I mean, it's 95 lines about this meaningful encounter. That seems pretty detailed, and a depiction is just a way of showing it, a way of telling it. So that phrase doesn't really have a way to be wrong here. And so because we've chopped it up and both the parts checked out, that's the most likely choice. When we chop up C and D, maybe they're right, but it's not as definitive. And we want things that we can more easily point to stuff in the passage and say, this is why I'm picking this. And so B is the one that has the strongest evidence for it, and that's what makes it right.